Mr. Speaker, will you please call the House to order?
The bill is passed.
I'd like to get a budget that represents the interests of the people who are standing here with me now.
To be part of the struggle to achieve a better society for all.
This bill says that New York understands the breadth and the depth of the problem.
Hello, I'm Tom Abinanti. I represent the 92nd Assembly District. That's Greenberg and Mount Pleasant in Westchester County. This is the second segment of a series of segments that we're doing on allergies, anaphylaxis, and epinephrine. With me is Dr. Kirsi, and you can tell me your last name again?
Kirsi Jarvinen-Seppo.
As I said before, but that's easy for you to say. I have difficulty with that. But thank you for coming back again for our second segment. We were here before. You were telling us about your specialty as an allergist. We were talking about some people reacting with an anaphylactic reaction to different types of allergies, whether it's a bee sting or food allergies or whatever. We heard from Kathy Frangella, whose daughter died as a result of an anaphylactic reaction, where medics showed up on the scene but couldn't recognize the signs of an anaphylactic reaction, even though epinephrine was there in the form of EpiPens. This seems to be, as you said, this is a significant number of people. How many people have food allergies and other types of allergies?
So this impacts 15 million people in the U.S. Food allergies in children impact 6 to 8% as an example, and about 3 to 4% of adults.
Now, a lot of the EMTs and the emergency responders carry epinephrine, right, in different forms. But the public can get them in what's known as an EpiPen or some of the other less known types of injectors. And as we recounted in the first segment, I was pleased to be able to pass some legislation here in Albany to make these devices widely available and to try to ensure that there are courses out there for people to learn how to use these. But the problem seems to be, you were telling me before, price and shortage.
Well, price, most importantly, they are differently priced for different clients, and some of them are quite expensive, especially if insurance doesn't cover it. So
I've heard $600 for two of these.
Absolutely, whereas some of them, have about a quarter of the cost. So it would be important to have the ability for pharmacists to substitute for a lower cost epinephrine auto-injector if family can't afford a higher price.
So if you write a prescription that says, well, I guess a lot of doctors would just say an EpiPen, right? Mm-hmm. That would be one of these because this is the most widely marketed.
Yep.
And a pharmacist can't say, well, I don't have this, but I have one of these or one of these. This is a,
OVQ.
OVQ.
Yep.
And so this might be less expensive, and the pharmacist can't substitute this for this unless you change the prescription.
They cannot, because although the active ingredient is the same in all of them, it's epinephrine or adrenaline, because the mechanics of the devices are slightly different, they're considered different medications.
Okay. So I have a bill in now with Senator Campanin from Long Island to change the law to allow the pharmacist to substitute as long as the patient agrees. So that we're trying to solve that problem. Now with me also is Jen. Jen, your full name is?
Jen Jobrack.
That's another name, which isn't too bad. It
Not
sounds pretty simple, but when you see it written out, it's not so easy. What do you do?
So I head up advocacy and government affairs for Food Allergy Research and Education. We are the nation's leading patient advocacy group representing the food allergic population, and we're delighted to have convened a group of advocates in Albany today to express support not only for the legislation that you have championed, but other bills that address the safety, well-being, inclusion, and health of people with food allergies. And I might add that in New York State, we've seen a 128% increase in treatments in food allergy between 2009 and 2016.
How'd you get involved in this?
Well, my background is in government affairs, and I was doing other things, but my now soon-to-be 13-year-old son was diagnosed with a peanut allergy at the age of 14 months. And when FARE opened an office in my community, I applied to go work for FARE because I knew of the good work they do. And here I am, heading up our government affairs.
So there are people
operation.
out there who are actually lobbying for good things here in Albany.
A few.
What's the message that you would give to the public if they said to you, why do you do this? What should we know from your organization?
Thank you for that question. The most important message is that food allergies are a public health issue of a life-threatening nature. And I always say to families who have experienced a diagnosis that if you've been diagnosed with a food allergy, even if you've never had a severe reaction, you could. It is possible. So you must treat this as a life-threatening disease, even if you've never experienced life-threatening consequences. The other message I would say is that unlike many other diseases, food allergy, the burden of keeping someone safe with food allergy rests on the community of folks in that person's world, whether it's the school teacher, the daycare provider, the emergency rescuer, the behavior of other people, what is fed to a child, proper labeling of food and reading of labeling. These are all critical steps. So you're monitoring it every day.
So it's all about education.
It's all about educating the families who live with the diagnosis, as well as the allied professionals who we rely on to keep those folks safe. And a lot of our legislative portfolio has been around educating those allied professionals.
All right, so you're doing it from a public point of view.
Yeah.
I want to thank both of you for coming, but I want to give you the last word, doctor. Is there something we can do in the medical profession to have more doctors emphasize to their patients that maybe they should be tested for allergies, or they should be looking for the signs of allergies or something like that? Do you have a proposal in that area?
Well, certainly for food allergies, if you're suspicious of food allergies in an individual, it would be a smart idea to have them tested by an allergist, and a referral is definitely required.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank both of you for coming. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with another family that unfortunately just suffered the results of anaphylactic shock.
So we were walking to school. I started thinking about lunch. Mom packed me turkey and cheese.
She's
I really
smart.
want cheese pizza.
Sometimes her mind wanders.
We should have a sleepover.
I remember saying, Laura?
I think I heard Mom say something.
The sign says don't walk.
Sometimes it's so overwhelming.
I really hope she doesn't
I
have
really
another
hope I
bad
don't
day
have another bad day
today.
at school today.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. Go to understood.org, a free online resource with support and tools to help your child thrive.
I'm Tom Abinanti. Welcome back to Assembly Update. We're talking about allergies. We're talking about anaphylactic shocks. We're talking about epinephrine. And we're talking with some people who unfortunately have experienced the negative impacts of anaphylaxis. We spoke earlier with an allergist. We spoke with somebody from an organization called FAIR that's trying to tell people about food allergies and what could happen if you're not careful. And now we have Tom Silvera and Dina Silvera. Unfortunately, their son suffered the impact of a food allergy.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. I realize that this is very difficult for the two of you, but I admire you and compliment you for coming out and telling people your story so that they can learn from that.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate that.
Tell me about Elijah.
Well,
You have time?
Yeah.
Elijah was a strong, and also he had this sense of autonomy for himself. Like he never wanted anybody to do anything for him. He wanted to do it on his own.
How old was he?
He was 3.
yeah, but sometimes he acts like
yeah,
he was way older than 3, which
But
I loved.
he had this energy about him. It's like, you know, if you walk into your room and you see him, his smile will light up like it's Christmas. And
That sounds like a beautiful little kid.
he was.
He was. He really was.
And what happened?
Regular day, took him. I am a parent who I didn't want to limit my son. I wanted him to be able to enjoy his childhood. It was the first time that I ever really actually separated my son. So this time he has a brother named Sebastian, and he was going to a different school. And he wanted to go to school too, but he couldn't go to his brother's school. They didn't have a program there for him. So I diligently sought out and looked for a school that I knew that could provide the needs, because he suffers with severe allergies and anaphylaxis. So I found a place, and I got that phone call at first they didn't tell me much of anything. They just said, you know, you need to come in and get your son. And then quickly I realized by the time I took him to the hospital that I called the facility back and I said, you know, what happened? What did you give my son? And they said they didn't give him anything to eat. And then after he died is when I found out that they actually did give him a grilled cheese sandwich.
They gave him a grilled cheese sandwich. Now, he
Yeah.
has a dairy allergy?
Yes.
Not only is he allergic to dairy, he's allergic to like many fruits, nuts. There was an assortment of like so many things.
But they were aware.
The problem with that
Did you
is-
tell them in advance that
Oh,
he
I
had
filled
allergies?
out all of the paperwork. I mean, I was running back and forth. That morning,
And
he went to
they
work.
wouldn't
and
take him after school unless the medical
Yeah.
forms were filled. His epinephrine, his Benadryl, everything was.
So you had all of this
Everything.
prepared.
All that.
Did he have an EpiPen or something, an epinephrine injector?
Everything.
So you took him to, this is the first day he was there?
This was like the first week, which
Well,
was
he wasn't even there a week. He
wasn't
was there, like, so they broke it up where when you're introducing, so for all those who don't know, when you're dealing with small children, because it's difficult when you're separating your child from their parent, they break up the time that your child has to stay in the facility with the new staff and the new kids. So he had to do one day for like maybe 2 hours, and then the next day, a little like 4 hours, and so they extended. So he was only there 2 days. He wasn't even there long,
So
like
if you
too
do the
long.
math in terms of like hours, it was.
He wasn't even there.
2 days.
And so the staff didn't follow the instructions.
It's not
No.
like not following instructions. When you entrust in a facility that you believe that, you know, they made you aware, like, hey, we have medically trained staff that can administer epinephrine in the event of an allergic reaction or anaphylaxis. You said you were trained, and you had all the children that also suffer from severe
Yeah.
food allergies. You know, it's unfortunate that it came to the point that they didn't understand the signs and symptoms of allergic reaction or anaphylaxis, which put our son in such a terrible situation that we had to. My wife had to rush him to the hospital where he then passed. So
They didn't even recognize the severity of what was happening
No.
to bring him to the hospital.
Correct.
Not even to call 911. You know, they called me.
Now, this is in Manhattan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just not very far from a hospital, right?
No,
not that
not
far.
at all. I could walk from my house to where he was going to school, and I could walk from his school to the hospital.
Now, this was a licensed daycare center
Correct.
Yes, it was.
in the middle of Manhattan.
Correct.
Yes.
And now, how long were you at the hospital with your son?
It wasn't even that long.
Okay. I think it highlights from a public policy point of view that we need to make sure that people who are licensed are trained.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what would you tell to parents? What would you say to parents?
They need to advocate for their children, especially the ones that cannot speak for themselves, the babies. You know, children under the age of 6 and infants, when you give your child over to a child care facility, you want to ask all the necessary questions. And not only that, you want to make sure that you talk to these people. You want to make sure that when they say to you that they can administer medication, that they mean that they can actually give medication, or what is the protocol? Are they going to call 911? And to ensure that all of the staff is trained. So look for the certifications, ask for those things. And if they're not, then I wouldn't trust sending my child there, because the possibility of them being safe there is slim to none.
You know, it's she said I wouldn't trust, but we still have to, whether the person is a nurse or a licensed or, you know, has a certification to administer medication, we still have to look for that training and make sure that they understand.
You've got to do your own due diligence. You
You
can't assume that,
You can't assume. You have
just
to do
because
it.
they say they're able to do something doesn't mean that they can.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all at home for watching. We're facing a very serious issue here. We're going to try to do in Albany what we can, but also people at home have to do their own due diligence and protect their kids.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.